Hey there, and thanks for listening to the Beekeeping for Newbees podcast. Just a quick note, we're keeping the show ad-free right now, so if you're hearing ads, they're coming from your podcast player and not from us. If you find value in what we're doing, we'd love to hear from you. We rely on support from listeners like you to keep the lights on and keep the content flowing. Thanks for being here. Now let's get into the episode. Hey everybody, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Beekeeping for Newbees. Thank you so very much for being so doggone good looking. You thought I was going to say something else, didn't you? Hey, I just wanted to thank you for listening and taking the time, and I appreciate you. As always, feel free to reach out, Jeff, at beekeepingfornewbees.com. That's NEWBEES.com. Well, folks, one of the more popular topics and discussions that are taking place today, particularly as is indicated by the 37 emails I have today. A lot of people are very concerned about their bees and the Polar Vortex, this really cold air mass coming down from Canada. Thank you, Canada. And a lot of people are really kind of bent out of shape. They're concerned about their bees. They're trying to make last minute preparations, and they're genuinely scared and concerned. I wanted to do kind of an impromptu episode because this is supposed to be episode 124, talking about varroa mites and my 2025 strategy and lots of other stuff. That is going to be coming up this Friday. But with all the messages I have in my mind, I created a fake number. I don't know if it's real or not, but my number is, for every person who emails me, there's probably like 100 people with the exact same question. So I am guessing there are probably thousands of people right now who are like, holy crap, what's going on with my bees with this polar vortex and this super cold air? What am I going to do? So in the episode, we're going to talk about, what's going on? What is the polar vortex? What is the difference between, let's say, the temperature, in the absence of this scenario and with it? We're going to talk about honey consumption, how the bees generate heat. We're going to go through a whole lot of things. And I'm still trying, again, this is one of the toughest things that I struggle with, because I'm still in this mindset a lot of the time where I'm talking to people who are in year 2, 3, 4, and I recognize that some of you are picking up, and this is like the first episode you listen to. So I'm still trying to do the best I can to kind of mix in some of the entry-level things as well so that anybody can follow along here. But let's touch on a few basics first. So if the temperature outside, and I'm getting back to my old ways, I used to be a lot better about making sure I included temperatures in both Celsius and Fahrenheit, recognizing that, the U.S. is probably, I think everybody else is on the Celsius system. I don't even know, to be honest with you. I just know that Canada, the UK, lots of other places are using Celsius. So we're going to try and bring that in here today. But at temperatures below about 10 Celsius, 50 Fahrenheit, bees are going to form a cluster, inside their hive, whether it's man-made or natural. And that cluster is going to generate and retain heat to keep the bees alive. The way that this is done is through the bees basically vibrating. They're essentially using the same muscles in their bodies that they would use for their wings to fly, but they're not flyers yet. They're all young winter nurse bees, basically, so they're not flying, but they're using that same muscle to create that vibratory kind of motion, and that motion is what generates the heat. Now, the temperature range that I'm typically accustomed to hearing is somewhere in that 92 to 95 Fahrenheit range. As I was pulling up the Celsius conversion, I think I saw something that indicated could go as far down as 84 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're looking at 29 to 35 Celsius. Like I said, whenever someone asks me, hey, what's that temperature going to be on the inside? I usually tell them it's somewhere in that like 92, 93 to 95 Fahrenheit range. So even when it's super crazy cold outside, sub-zero, whatever, Celsius or Fahrenheit, the bees are still able to keep warm in the cluster. Now you might be thinking, well, hey, it's really probably cool to be, warm to be the bee on the inside of the cluster. What about everybody on the outside? Great question. The bees will be kind of on a continuing rotational basis so that no individual bee gets stuck on that outer cold edge for an extended period of time. So kind of each layer of bees basically represents an additional layer of insulation. So of course, as they get further to the outside, they become colder, more difficult for them to generate heat. At that point, they're almost sometimes getting to the point where they're just an insulator because they're so cold, they don't even have as much of the muscle movement. But once they get cold, they're going to rotate back in and have someone else rotate out, and they can get a chance to warm up. And then they kind of just keep repeating this kind of rotation. So I think what they say is energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It only changes forms, something like that. I would be applying that exactly to this situation. The bees need heat. To generate the heat, they need energy. To get the energy, they need the honey. And this, again, goes back to exactly why they're trying to store a ton of honey during the spring and summer, so that they have plenty of energy that they can transfer from honey to heat energy to keep them alive till the next spring. When you have a situation like what we're having, and I'm not even gonna pick on a specific area. I saw a map, I think it was yesterday. There's a guy, I'm gonna plug this guy. I don't know him personally, never had a discussion with him. I just really like him. I think he's a cool guy. He does a weather thing here in the US. I think he's based in Kentucky. His name is Ryan Hall, Hall. And his channel is Ryan Hall Y'all. So it's, Y''ALL. He does live streams whenever there's major storms, hurricanes, tornadoes, ice events, whatever's going on. He goes live. He has storm chasers out there reporting back. He donates tons and tons of money to, I think he calls it the Y'all Squad. And he sends people out on recovery missions, and they deliver generators and water and food and lots of things. So if you have a chance to check him out on YouTube, Ryan Hall Y'all, really cool channel. But I was watching him the other day, and he was talking about some of these temps. And I think that the actual temperature, not wind chill, but temperatures in some parts of the central and northern U.S. were going to be like in the -10, -15 kind of range. The difference between that temperature and maybe, say, 25 or 30 degrees is going to represent likely about a 20 to 30% increase in food consumption by the bees. They got to generate more heat. They're going to need to consume more. So typically they're going to consume, about 1 to 2 pounds. Now this is a really variable number. Really depends where you are, the amount of activity, how cold it is, how warm it is even, right? If it's warmer and bees are more active, but there's not as much pollen and nectar and resources available because it's winter, well, then now they're still consuming resources, right? So the 1 to 2 it's not a well-defined thing. It's an estimation, but about 1 to 2 pounds a week is what they're going to use. So let's say they're typically using, your bees, just for easier math, they're using 1 pound a week. Well, during this time, they might be using 1 1/4 a week, maybe 1 1/2 even, right? So you are going to probably go through during the course of like a 3-week event of a really cold type of situation like we have with this polar vortex. You may see them actually consume an extra 2 or 3 pounds during that time. So if you had 2 or 3 of these events that were kind of not typical or unplanned in a regular season, you may see, 5 or 6 additional pounds used that they wouldn't use or did not use in a previous season. So if you've done your part and the bees have done their part in the summer and the fall, this really shouldn't be a big deal. This doesn't change a lot. And, if you're a beekeeper and you're in Canada, you're in northern U.S., you're in any kind of a climate that is pretty cold, already, and it's going to be cold, and this is possible because it happens every year. As an example, you've probably taken actions to either use insulated hives, hives that have large styrofoam sections on the outside or the inside. You might be wrapping your colonies. You might leave the sides alone, but put a 5-inch block of insulation on the top, or whatever you might be doing for your insulation solution. You're already pretty well prepared for this anyway. Now, there are things that still might make sense. You do still want to make sure that you have air coming in. You want that ventilation at the bottom. You want to make sure you're allowing air to come in. If this storm system, this air mass has an accompanying storm system with it, you do want to keep an eye on snow at the entrance. Now, snow all around the sides and everything else, that can serve as a pretty good insulator, so that doesn't bother me. But I do like to make sure that the entrances are closed. This is the only correction, that the entrance down near the bottom is open. This is actually the only scenario that I would advocate for having a top entrance. Like if you have hives that routinely are sitting in 1.5 feet, 2 feet, 3 feet of snow, it may not be the worst idea to have a secondary exit basically up top, so that if you do get warmer days, they can escape, so that they do have a way to get some fresh air in. But if you don't have that, just go out periodically and make sure that that entrance is opened up so that you do have some airflow coming in. This system, I think this is the very beginning of it that I'm experiencing. In my area, the first year I was here, I've told this story several times, but the first time I was here, the first winter, 16 to 17, the river, the brackish water river that's behind my house froze all the way across. We had a spell for about 3 weeks. Temperatures, daytime highs were in the teens and maybe low 20s as well in Fahrenheit. And it was pretty stinking cold. My hives overwinter with no problem. These are just regular, like 5/8 thick pine, with a vented inner cover is what they call it, which is just, it's that 3.5 inch high inner cover that I put on the YouTube channel. You guys can check that out. You drop insulation, it's a foam insulation, about 2.5 inches goes in there in the winter, keeps it nice and insulated. That's all I had. And they did great. I had no issues. I think they were carrying like 45, 50 pounds of honey, and they had no problem. But right now we're getting temps, we're in the 20s and 30s, depending on which day, time of day, and all that kind of stuff. But the wind with it has been pretty vicious. And as we know, like wind obviously keeps air moving. So the air that is sitting directly around the bees that they're warming up, if they've got a really cold, constant breeze, they are constantly fighting against that. So this might be a time to revisit the things that are around your hive. If your hives are maybe facing the direction of the wind, let's put some bales of hay or some fencing or, do something to get in front of, even if you have to take a piece of material, like a thin piece of wood or whatever, and lean it against the front of the hive, kind of like at a 45-degree angle against the hive, put a couple of bricks down on the ground so it can't blow away, whatever you have to do. But try to see if you can't block that direct flow from coming in. Well, I shouldn't say block it from coming in, but you want to slow down that wind. It goes back to what we were talking about yesterday with, facing hives in a direction that doesn't have that cold air blowing in. If you didn't get that memo, you just heard the episode yesterday and you're thinking like, oh crap, I should have done that. It's not too late, right? Even if worst case scenario, like you have an old piece of plywood just laying around somewhere, take that, cut a piece that's about 12 inches, a foot, and just lean it right up against the front, staple it to the front of the hive, whatever you got to do, just put something there that provides a windbreak. And as far as entrance reducers go in the off season, we've talked about this several times, but during the season, I typically run about like the 2.5, 3 inch wide opening. I will go wide open for about a month. There's that period of time from 20, 25 April, 1st of May, somewhere in there. I'll run wide open for about 3 or 4 weeks in that period because there's just so many bees. There's so many resources available. Robbing really isn't an issue. But then I go down to like that 2 to 3 inch opening. When the dearth comes in the summertime, this is where it gets a little weird. And I know I'm kind of going off topic here, but I was thinking about the entrance here. I usually like to keep that 2.5 or 2 3/4, whatever the size is on the standard entrance reducer. If you make your own, whatever you do, but leaving like a 2 to 3 inch opening, that's more than enough. You really don't want to have the whole hive completely wide open because even a strong colony can get robbed out. Now, they wouldn't necessarily get completely robbed out because obviously they're a really strong colony. But what happens is, the amount of bees that are actually working as guards, it's just not a heavily staffed position within the hive. It's not the number one priority. Yes, defending the hive is important, but they kind of rely on that alarm pheromone to be like, hey, we got a problem. Everybody needs to come and help. And then everybody kind of responds. It's more of a reactive kind of thing. Anything you can do to just give them a smaller and easier space to defend is going to make life better. But it's also good for the wintertime as well. You just need like that 3/4 of an inch to 1 inch opening. That's more than enough space to allow some cool air to come in, allows them to enter and exit for cleansing flights, and really works well year round. You don't have to go wide open. The only real advantage I see, honestly, especially if you're not using a screened bottom board in the summer, is just allowing a little bit more air in with that 2.5, 3 inch opening. But anyway, you definitely want to just keep that in mind about the entrance, which direction you're facing. Can you get something in front of it? Fence, bales of hay, piece of wood, whatever it might be, even if it's just temporary, just for a couple of days. So remember, bees have been doing this for a long time. Now, the tree is definitely different from what most of us have in the backyard, especially if it's a traditional, Langstroth hive. But they're really good at this. They know how to survive. They know how to keep themselves warm. What you do want to do, though, is pay attention to the resources. So I know there's a gentleman in the Discord room. He has a piece of plexiglass that he has as kind of like one of the top layers. It's got a little vent in it. And at the very top of his hive, he can actually pull the outer cover, look down in, and kind of get a view of those honey frames that are at the very top. Whatever, if you want to do that if that works for you. I haven't done it. I can't really speak to it. But what I do like to do is grab the hive and kind of lift up. And from the back, I can kind of tell by feel right now. I don't know how many pounds it is, but I just know kind of how it feels when I lift it. Like, okay, this is a little light. This is going to be interesting. So you want to pay attention to how heavy those hives are. And we're getting to that point now. I can't believe it. It's January now. I will start doing this, late January. Late January going into early February. By mid-February, we catch a couple of those warm days, and it happens so many times. That is the danger zone time. We're going to talk about that too. But that's a dangerous time because the last of the bees' resources are, getting up there near the top of that hive. They get those warm days. Yeah, but for us in the spring, I know it's juniper and alder, but there's a few others that start out, I get those pollen alerts. As soon as those pollen alerts kick in, that's when I know that it's getting ready to get crazy for the bees. But as soon as that pollen starts to flow, they immediately start rearing brood, and they will start laying like crazy. The queen will start laying. They will start raising brood using the last of all their resources. And then here you are at the end of February, not a whole lot of bees left. Your nurse bees are graduating up, and they're going out and they're starting to forage and bring things in. So, of course, their life expectancy is about to start diminishing because they've graduated out of that inside the hive role. And then you get stuck with 2, 3, 4 weeks of really cold temperatures where they're not getting out much. They can't warm. They don't have enough bees left in their cluster to even warm all that new brood. They have to leave the brood alone and go form a cluster somewhere else to save their own lives. And all of this brood dies. I've had it happen before several times. It's really painful to see. But we'll be talking about that a little bit more in the next couple of weeks. But this was meant to just be a really quick episode to let you know, kind of talk you off the ledge there. Bees are going to be okay as long as you've done everything you needed to do. You got them prepped. They got themselves prepped. Sit back, relax, and don't sweat it. So that should pretty much wrap it up for this. I am going to record some more, I think today or tomorrow. We have another episode, like I said, that Friday episode that's going to come out. We're talking about varroa mites. I was going to do 2 different episodes. One of them was just going to be 100% dedicated to you all new beekeepers to say, hey, this is, number 3 in our multi-part series about what new beekeepers need to be doing to get ready. So we covered everything with discovering what the legal issues might be within your home, your region, your state, city, whatever your territory, whatever the rules are, wherever you might be. We talked about that. We talked about where to place hives within the yard. Now, the most important thing, we're going to talk about varroa. So instead of me breaking that into 2 episodes being, hey, this is why varroa is really important, and hey, here, this is my strategy that I'm adapting for 2025, we're going to merge those into just a single episode. So that's going to get recorded in the next day or 2. That'll be released Friday at midnight. So you'll be able to check that out. And please feel free to jump in, like I said the other day, jump in on the YouTube channel, take a look, run through everything, tell me what you need. What did we not cover? What answers can I provide for you? Like I said, I'm doing this every day now, my full-time job here, so tell me what you need. All right, folks, that's all I got for you. Take care, be kind to one another, and remember that I love you, and there's nothing you can do about it. We'll talk to you soon.